This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode, I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 378 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. This is my Seoul trip report. First, let me pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation where I'm recording this today. So, my son and I went to Seoul in South Korea kind of spontaneously in November. I had about a 10-day patch without any kind of face-to-face work booked, and I thought, it might be a good time to get away. He found a fabulous airfare on Google Flights, and we booked that, and it was 2 weeks later that we left. So this episode is a report on that. I'm going to start off telling you about the kind of planning that I did. Then I have a very special appearance from my son, who has not been on the podcast for many, many years. So thanks, Rubes. I follow that up with a little chat about my thoughtful travel scorecard. I'm scoring myself again for this trip. And then I'm actually going to talk dollars. I don't often talk about trip budgets, but a few people asked me about this one, and I've managed to get the numbers together to tell you. It was really a low budget trip, but such a good one. So stick around for that at the end. So anyway, it's been quite a while since I've travelled so spontaneously, but I do really love that approach. As soon as we booked our flights, I sprang into action with my version of planning. If you're a regular listener, you'll know I'm not a fan of having a detailed itinerary or tons of bookings or anything, but my version of planning is this. I did 3 things. I started reading novels by Korean writers. So I'd read a few in the past, but I went into overdrive for that time. I love to do that because you can often get like a real look at the culture that's just part of the story. It's not designed for tourist consumption. So a couple of favourites from that readathon were Han Kang's The Vegetarian and Winter in Sokcho by Swiss-Korean author Elissa Schur-Dusapin. And I had also read, the year before, I suppose, Christine Newell's memoir, 5 Seasons in Seoul, when she came on the podcast. Yeah, it must have been last year. Anyway, and a few more. I've got an Amazon list of these and a few others that I've either read in the past or I want to read, and I'll link to that in the show notes so that you can see a bunch of Korean reading if you're curious too. So I did that. That was first. Second, I booked accommodation after some pondering and Googling and review reading. I wanted it to be not too expensive, not an international chain, not right in the centre. And a couple of friends, in fact, recommended the Hongdae University District, which is to the west of the city centre in Seoul. I actually ended up in a very quiet part of this in a small guest house. I guess it probably had 6 rooms, I think. It was super close to several different train stations in a kind of a really leafy area with quiet streets, no high-rise, heaps of local restaurants, not many tourists, had lots of positive reviews, and it was not expensive, which was a key criteria for me. So that was I was happy to find that, and I just wanted to stay in one place for the whole time. We had 8 days. I love being able to just stay put and not race and see things at our leisure. Having said that, we did have very long, very fabulously filled days, but that was our choice at the time rather than racing around trying to see the whole country in a week. Third thing is I kind of put together a brainstorm of a bunch of possible things we might like to do. So looking through, the kind of the typical tourist lists and some more specific ideas actually I found in some Reddit forums from people who live in Seoul discussing what to do that's, not the mainstream. And I put all of them onto a Google, like a My Maps map, so we could see where everything was. Then we could just, play it by ear once we were there. The only booking we did make was our DMZ tour, which my son especially wanted to go on, and so did I. To get to the demilitarized zone near North Korea, obviously, you have to go with a tour. You can't just, go by yourself. And we didn't want to miss out on that. So we booked that, I think, a couple of days before we left. And of course, I also asked my son for his wish list. He's 15. So, what does a 15-year-old boy want to do? And beyond the DMZ tour, that was his number one thing. He also added seeing the World Cup stadium and a soccer kit shop that he'd found called Over the Pitch. So happy to put them on our list on my map, and we did. So long story short, we had a brilliant trip. Super lucky with the weather, cool but never freezing. This was mid-November. No rain, gorgeous blue sunny skies, all the autumn leaves out. Lucky with our accommodation. It was just perfect for us. It was like, yeah, best trip I've had in ages. So I decided, Ruben and I decided to chat through our experience recording a little chat about our favourite things of the trip. I used 6 categories: best day out, best tourist attraction, best nature, best meal, best shop, and best special memory. So I'm going to play you that chat now. Now, there's a weird important fact you'll need to know so that it makes sense throughout. We have a 1-year-old kitten, or cat, I suppose, now she's 1, named Aristotle. She is the love of our lives. And of course, she didn't come with us to Seoul, but you'll hear from our chat, we did not forget about her. So first topic is the best day out. What was yours?
Going to the DMZ and seeing the border with North Korea.
I know when we first said we'd go to Seoul, that was the first thing you thought of, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was definitely something I really wanted to do and see. It's something I've learned about a lot.
Yeah, I've watched you watch a lot of videos about North Korea, so
yeah, so
as close as we could get.
Seeing it in person is pretty special.
It was pretty amazing. And I'd been there 20 years ago, and it's a bit different now, or what you can access is a bit different, but it was equally interesting.
Yeah.
Did you have a favourite bit, like the tunnels or the platforms? Or
the tunnels were fun. Seeing the fake coal mine that the North Koreans had dug wasn't very convincing, but to think that there'd been North Koreans in there trying to, make infiltration tunnels was special.
Yeah, pretty different.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. My favourite day out, I mean, I did love the DMZ as well, definitely, but probably the day when we were out walking along the top of Mount Naksan on the city wall of Seoul, and beautiful views and down through the mural village and stuff. Perfect weather. It was just a lovely day. Okay, number 1, tourist attraction. So I'm trying to think of just, places that are on the list of things to do. Did you have a favourite?
The War Memorial was really cool, leaning in with the interest in, history and politics like that, seeing as there was, a pretty major conflict there and all the history about it. There was a cool building, lots of stuff to see, lots of planes hanging from the roof and planes outside you could go in and see up close and all sorts.
My favourite picture I have of you is actually from the bottom floor next to a car. Can you remember?
Was it Kim Jong-il's limousine or whatever he called it?
Yeah. It had a weird history to it. I can't quite remember. It had been sold to the US in some way and then come back. I'll have to look it up. My favourite kind of tourist attraction, typical tourist attraction place, it's hard to say, but the temple we went to on the very first day, the Bongwenza temple in Gangnam, actually, was just a really beautiful temple.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a great complex. You could go right up high and have amazing views, and the colours that they use.
And with the autumn leaves and everything combined was very beautiful.
It was very special. And maybe it has that kind of halo effect of being the very first thing we did in Seoul. So I have a special memory. Speaking of autumn leaves, my next topic is the best bit of nature. Did you have favourite part of nature we saw?
The Cheonggyecheon stream going through the centre of the city was really cool. It used to be a highway, and then they transformed that into a beautiful stream with paths cutting right through the busy city with all the skyscrapers on every side, and very contrasting.
Yeah. And that wasn't there when I was in Seoul 20 odd years ago. So it was really, I didn't even know they'd done it. I can't remember how long it is, but maybe 11 or 12 kilometres or something. We only walked maybe 2 kilometres or so. So cool. That's probably also my favourite kind of part of nature. And it was, as you say, so contrasting. Cool to have that nature right in the middle of the enormous city. But also, you mentioned this already, the autumn leaves up on Mount Naksan was pretty amazing. And do you remember on the way that day, just after we got out of the train station, there was a tree that was full of yellow leaves and the wind blew?
Yeah, and it went all down like we're Disney princesses.
That's a good description of it. Felt like it was almost snowing with all these yellow leaves. But everyone there was amazed looking up, and it was really cool. Now, we didn't eat a lot of Korean food while we were there because you're not a big fan of spicy food.
No, not at all.
Not at all. There you go. So we found a place near our accommodation which was pretty impressive. And I suspect that might be your favourite meal. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, it was definitely my favourite meal, and yours too.
True.
It was Izakaya Champion, which was a Japanese restaurant. I had yakisoba there. It was the best Japanese food I've ever had outside of Japan. Not even close.
Like, not even close to what we get here?
No, definitely not even
No.
close to what we get here. Nothing is like it here.
Yeah. It was so delicious that we went back a total of 3 times. But, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
They were so lovely, weren't they? The people
Mhm.
were nice. It was just a really local place because we weren't staying like in the real city or anything. Oh my goodness, they had the best tofu salad there. Yeah, I can still taste it. It was perfection. Now, we also did a little bit of shopping. I believe that other people, when they go to Seoul, they go like shopping for skincare and stuff, but we did not do that.
No, we did not.
What shops did you enjoy the most?
Shops like Daiso were interesting. I remember specifically there was the one near the bus stop for our DMZ tour, which was like a really narrow but like 7 or 8 story building. It was just really unique, something you'd never get here. And they had all sorts of random stuff. It was an interesting experience.
Yes. Can you explain a couple of the random things we brought home from that Daiso?
Well, we brought home a gold cat bowl. We brought home 3 pairs of cat glasses. Heart-shaped glasses, some cool, stylish sunglasses, and some like monocly circular glasses.
She doesn't wear them often, our cat.
No, she's not a big fan of that Korean fashion, I guess.
Actually, while we're talking about the shops, what about it was another Daiso,
It was
wasn't
another
it?
Daiso.
Where the story.
We were waiting in, I don't remember what the district.
Oh, in Myeongdong.
Myeongdong, for the sun to go down to see all the Christmas lights around there. And we been in Daiso just to wander around. But outside was a sticker machine and like a photo printing machine. So we got like a bunch of pictures of Aristotle printed and some stickers made, and left a sticker on the machine for all the Korean people to see. So she is now a celebrity cat in Seoul.
Absolutely. That was a great way to kill time. Speaking of the cat, because we are a bit obsessed with our cat lately, but I also thoroughly enjoyed that shop, and also Muji. So funnily enough, those are both Japanese shops, but the Korean edition of them, and they were amazing. And in Muji, we bought these amazing, like, I don't know what to call them other than like sock slippers. They were kind of like socks, but more like slippers and furry and warm. And we wore them every day in our accommodation. And I can't wait till next winter when I can wear them again. But my other favorite shop was really kind of surprisingly at the Gyeongbokgung Palace. So it's the most touristy palace, I think, which was also really beautiful.
Mhm.
It was really cool to see. But they had a gift shop. I always love like a touristy gift shop, I have to say. But they had really nice things and really reasonably priced. Like often those sort of gift shops are really expensive. And I bought there a print of, I don't know, how would you describe it? It's like, it's a kind of
Chaos dragon.
a chaos dragon. Yeah, exactly. It's maybe like a traditional art of like a part of like a legendary animal from the religion or part of temple lore or something. Anyway, we thought it looked a bit like our chaos dragon cat.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's on the wall already and I like that. So just to finish it off, how about your number one memory of Seoul?
Not exactly Seoul, but visiting the DMZ was definitely something I will always remember because it's just something I'm fascinated about, something I've learnt a lot about throughout the years. And it's just a very unique, not really something you can see anywhere else in the world kind of experience. And we had a great tour guide. He made it better for sure. And yeah.
He was super nice, wasn't he, SJ? And we picked that tour company. You have to go on a tour. You can't go not on a tour. But they were a tour company that used ex-military as guides, which I think helped a bit because he had extra stories to tell.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a good day out. Now, my number one memory is actually going to the Starfield Library at the COEX Mall in Gangnam. I was actually looking back, I don't know why I found it, but through some of my old screenshots from several years ago, and I found I'd taken a screenshot of someone who must have gone to that library years ago, and I'd kind of forgotten even that it existed. Can you describe what the Starfield Library is like?
It's like a really modern kind of square building with a big sky, like just a big glass box sticking out the ground. goes like half in the ground and it's just like 10-meter tall bookshelves going around the whole place, curved and multi-story and really
Like no other library you've ever seen.
no other library I've ever seen.
It was pretty cool. And obviously, I really love books and libraries, so it was extra impressive. I just remember walking in and we were like on the second floor, I suppose, looking down across lots of the books, and I had the biggest smile on my face. So that sums up many of our favourite experiences in Seoul. But if you want to know some more, I also wrote a Substack post about the best random moments. I'll leave a link in the show notes. Or if you just go to thoughtfultravel.substack.com and find a recent post called "The Best Moments of My Trip to South Korea Were Not on My Itinerary." I mean, to be fair, nearly nothing was on my itinerary, but there's a few extra bonuses in there that are hard to talk about non-visually, so there's some photos in there as well. Now, as I promised, I want to give myself a score for thoughtful travel the way I did for my Bangkok trip with my thoughtful travel scorecard. So for the Bangkok trip, I scored myself day by day, but for this longer trip, I've decided it was kind of more useful to give myself a score for 5 key areas. So the first of those is learning, because I think pre, during, and after a trip, it's important to be learning. Now, I actually give myself 8 out of 10 for this. There's always room for more learning, but considering the time frame especially, I did lots of pre and post trip reading and watching, and I have never Googled so much on a trip, I don't think, because there was just lots of things we wanted to know about, little things like the subway safety. So if you've ever ridden the metro in South Korea, in Seoul, you may have seen frequent advertising about evacuations or what to do in emergencies, which was utterly fascinating. It's just very prepared, masks ready at all the stations. And also, I mean, it's hard to describe, and it almost was a little bit freaky to see so much to remind us something bad could happen. But also, hey, everyone's very prepared. So there was that. And other intriguing things, we used the Korean version of Google Translate. There's an app that works better than Google Translate called Papago to translate a lot of signs. So, for example, in the metro cars, in the trains, there was signs about the air conditioning temperatures. I know this is very niche, but I just find this stuff fascinating. So they had all this communication to passengers about how some parts of the carriages were, for various reasons, warmer or colder, and that they kept what temperatures they tried to regulate it at for summer and winter. So obviously in winter they keep it at a cooler temperature, so you don't have to, strip off all of your coats and stuff. You could choose different parts of the carriage if you were particularly sensitive to certain temperatures. Super fascinating. So 8 out of 10 for learning. I could go on and on. I won't. I would have got more marks if I had better Korean language skills. I could really only say hello and thank you. And I really wished, in many cases, lots of people spoke English, but of course I'd always prefer to be able to use a bit more Korean. And there was some older people we met who couldn't, like at the convenience store just across from our accommodation. So one we went to quite often, there was this lovely older lady, and each time we would go, she would get up the courage to try and ask us something else. And she asked us in Korean. I managed to understand, did we speak Korean? I'm like, no, sorry. And then she'd come back the next day and she'd point to my son and sort of say, son? I was like, yes, because he's very tall. So, just checking, yes. And, all sorts of stuff. I wished I could have had a proper conversation with her. So, all right, so that was learning. Next is transport, and I give myself a 7.5 out of 10. We mostly used our feet. My goodness, we walked so far, and the metro. So obviously those are very sustainable and great ways to get around and fit with the thoughtful travel mode. We did use kind of a, taxi or Uber, Korean version twice. The first time when we arrived, because we did arrive close to midnight, I think. And yeah, we were both pretty tired, been traveling all day, etc. So we splurged. And also on the last morning, we were going to take the train back to the airport as well. But then we unfortunately actually had a really bad morning's sleep because the smoke alarm in our room started beeping, the battery's low, and it was just didn't last long enough for us to, try and get dressed and get up and go and get some help or anything. But it was just made us grumpy. So my son said, I want to take a taxi. We did, but we both wished we hadn't, because the driver was crazy. He was driving so far above the speed limit, and that scared us. So anyway, I would get more points for that. Also, loser point for non-direct flights. Not heaps of choice there because there's no direct flights from Perth to Seoul, but we did, because we used a budget airline, we did have an extra stop where we flew Perth, Singapore, Taipei, Taipei, Seoul on the way there. On the way back, it was more direct. So, yep, 7.5 out of 10. Accommodation, giving us 8 out of 10. Super happy with this. It was really small, locally owned, non-luxe. They were not stripping the beds and washing everything every day, etc. For us, it was perfect. My next category is sightseeing. I've given us a 7 out of 10 for that. We didn't just do like the typical list of everything everybody goes to see in Seoul. We picked the things off that list that we would enjoy and picked just stuff each day depending on our mood and which part of the city we'd be in. There was one of the traditional villages, the Bukchong Hanok village, which is on all the lists, but it has really suffered, I read, from over-tourism and, from kind of tourists being idiots as well. It's a place where people live, but over the years, tourists have got noisier and, leaving rubbish behind. And apparently things like, because they're, gorgeous little old-style buildings, opening people's doors and walking in, like imagining that it's like free to just, go where you like. And so the government has put curfews on tourists. I think they can only be there between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. They were planning to or already have, I'm not sure, blocked tourist buses going there and stuff. So I thought we can skip that. I don't want to be part of that problem. So that was 7 out of 10. My final category is the giving back. I like to do this, but I have failed us here. 2 out of 10. I didn't pay enough attention to it, and I didn't instantly know what a good way would be to give back in South Korea. I did give us 2 points out of 10 for at least giving the bulk of our spend to locally owned small businesses like the accommodation and small local restaurants, although a few convenience stores too. Oops. But also, we didn't do bad we didn't visit any of the kind of unethical animal cafes that seem to be rife in Seoul and in Japan as well. Yeah, in South Korea and Japan lately, I keep seeing more of these, and most of them are not, appropriately ethical animal treatment. So we didn't do that. And we did travel there in off-peak seasons, so that's helpful because there are apparently definitely some peak times now with quite serious over-tourism issues in parts of Seoul. But still, I do still think it's important in everywhere you visit to try and find ways to give back. Of course, it's much easier to find lots of opportunities in a lower income country rather than in a city like Seoul. Something for me to ponder. Anyway, overall, that adds up to giving me a 65% score on the Thoughtful Travel scorecard. Fair enough. Of course, it is totally subjective, but the point is it helps me to reflect on whether I was actually being a thoughtful traveller or not, and I think that's useful. Lastly, as I promised, I don't normally talk about budgets, but since a few people have asked, firstly, I do want to totally acknowledge I have huge privilege to have any income left over in these tricky times to travel with, but also just wanted to show that some trips aren't as expensive as you might think. So for this one, our airfares on Scoot. Scoot is Singapore's budget airline, and they were absolutely fine. Of course, it's not as comfortable, and you either buy food or bring your own, etc. But we were perfectly happy. They were 550 Australian dollars each return, so that was obviously a really cheap fare from Perth to Seoul. It's a pretty relatively long distance. I think time of year and just having some flexibility. So that's $370. For the accommodation, we stayed in Okie Dokie House, and yes, apart from the good reviews, I also did partly pick it because it's got a cute name, I confess. And for 8 nights, we paid 900 Australian dollars. That's about $600. So yeah, it's a budget guest house. They don't clean your room while you're there if you're there only for a week, which is fine by me. You fetch yourself new towels when you need from the basket in the hallway. It was comfy, heated well, which was beginning of winter, big room, absolutely loved it. Very happy with that and good price. Now, things like getting around, the train is super cheap there, just $1 or $2 depending on the distance. As I said, those taxis we used twice. Fairly long drive from Incheon, from the airport into Seoul, although we were on the Incheon side of Seoul, so a little bit cheaper than if you're going right to the centre, but worked out to be about 55 Australian dollars, 37 US. Now, our meals, we had convenience store or bakery snacks for some of those meals, about $5, and the Japanese restaurant we mentioned, the dinners were about $30 for both of us, so very reasonable. It's $20 US. The most expensive meal we had was a dim sum dinner, which was about $50 Australian, 34 US. There are definitely plenty of more expensive places you can eat as well, but it worked for us. The most expensive thing we did do was our DMZ tour, which was $45 US each. Some are a bit cheaper. This was a little bit, I think $10 more than probably the average for the half-day trips, but we really loved the guide, and it seemed like these guys, PLK, had like a good system with their guides, and having a guide that had extensive military experience in the Korean military, not just their compulsory service, but more just meant they had, our guide had lots of good stories to tell, and judging from the reviews I saw, that was common. So total for our 8-day trip for 2 people added up to be under 3,000 Australian dollars, including airfares, accommodation and spending. So that's under 2,000 US in total. So per person, about 1,300 Australian or 900-ish US. I think that's a pretty reasonable price. I don't know. I actually really don't talk about budgets that often. So I don't know. You can tell me if that's super cheap or just lowish budget, or if you would spend less. We didn't pay attention too much. We kind of could see that it was going to be within our budget, and we're happy. So to finish up, I just want to tell you about some of the links and stuff I'm going to leave in the show notes, because we've got a few things there this episode. You'll be able to find these show notes at notaballerina.com/378. So I will include my travel reading list for some of the books and stuff I read or listened to before going. Because my beautiful son Ruben joined me, I am also leaving a link to his YouTube channel. If you or someone you know is a fan of pro clubs, what used to be FIFA gaming, he has actually, I'm biased, but it is a super entertaining channel under the name of Reginald Ramen. So I'll leave a link to that, or just search for Reginald Ramen in YouTube, and you can see what he gets up to when he is not traveling with me. I'll also leave a link to that Substack post about the other moments on our trip that we loved. I'll leave a link for our DMZ tour company, just in case you're curious, PLK Travel. Also, a link to my map that I mentioned, where I threw in all of the things that we might want to do. Of course, don't forget, come and chat or ask questions or anything in our Facebook or LinkedIn groups for Thoughtful Travellers, and sign up at thoughtfultravel.substack.com so that you don't miss out on any other news as well. All of this at the show notes, notaballerina.com/378. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.